Hey everybody, it's Betsy, and today I'm going to be doing our colored ballpoint pen drawing lesson. And I realized that maybe not everybody has these kinds of pens at home, particularly the yellow is pretty rare. So if you don't have all the colors in ball pens, you can go ahead and just grab any kind of felt tip markers that you have around the house. You just, regular Crayolas or other types of markers to put down the initial color, and then you can just use your black to do the details on top. So for this drawing lesson we're going to be drawing chameleons. We've got one that's got red and yellow and green, and then we've got another one that's mostly green and yellow. So we're going to start with this one that has a little bit of the easier colors, and I'll put the reference image for you, like down in the corner or something, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So today we are drawing this chameleon, and you can see that the chameleon's head is way over on the left, and then we'll use everything on the right for the body. The body is going to take up the most space, and then the tail only takes up a little bit, the head only takes up a little bit. So we'll go ahead and go to our paper. We're going to start with our brown. And I'll zoom in so you can see what I'm doing, but I'm going to leave the edge of my paper in view so you can see what's going on. And we'll do this dot about 2 millimeters wide if you want to get technical. It's about that big. And where it is on my paper placement is a little bit above half. There's the halfway mark of my paper, and I put it just a little bit higher so that will have some room for the belly going down later. So that very, very, very small dot, that 2 millimeter dot, is where we will begin. And around that dot is a yellow rim. So I'll go ahead and add just a yellow stripe all the way around. Then we'll go ahead and grab our light green, not the dark green, lighter green. Or you can also use your light blue if you prefer, your sky blue. And we'll put a wider stripe all the way around. Then we'll go back to our yellow and add another yellow stripe all the way around. This is going to be the chameleon's eye, and since they have skin over their eyeballs, that green part is also going to get some brown stripes. So once you finish off your yellow rim, we'll go back to brown, and we'll add just a few stripes. I'm just tapping my pen so that it has a little bit of texture. Isn't perfectly straight, and we'll do about 5 of these just to add some texture to that eye. Next we're going to keep going with our brown, and we'll color above the yellow here. We'll come down around the eye, and then we'll go forward toward the nose. But it's not that far out, as you can see. It's maybe twice the width of the eye. If I take my pen and put it on the edge of my eye and then pinch right at the opposite side and move it over, it's almost twice as long. We'll color this in lightly. Go all the way around the eye. We're going to keep it very narrow on the top, because he does have that frill that comes up later. There's a little curve right by his eye. And then a reverse curve. And we'll color that all in brown for now. Like that. Feel free to pause the video here until you get to this step, but I'll keep moving. We're going to start with the frill that goes upward. So from the edge of that brown, I'm going up, way tall into the sky. We'll go about there for now, just because we can always adjust as we go. There will also be another stripe on the other side here, so it's going to look a little bit like crazy horns at first. This one is going to be a little bit thicker and a little bit longer just because it's closer to us. Then I'll go ahead and grab my yellow again, and we'll start continuing the stripe underneath the brown down here. To the front as well. We'll have that stripe. After that stripe of yellow, I go back to my green, and my green will go right underneath. Put in a wide stripe here, but there's another yellow stripe right here. So we'll carry that backward a little bit, just until it gets to this edge where the horn thing is right there. Cross that over. Then I can go ahead and fill in the rest of my green. And there's another little pocket of green right here, but just a short one. And we'll have more yellow coming on the other side of that green patch. Back to the green. It'll only go about that far, so this section in between will be the green. Grab my yellow again. I'll also widen out the end of this yellow stripe here. And then we'll have some green in between. Right now it's still looking pretty crazy, kind of like an alien. But we're going to hopefully fix that up with a little bit of brown. This is going to be the nostril right at the end of this stripe. So I'll put another little dot, a little bit more like a watermelon seed, a little pointier on the forward end if you can. And this brown can continue down, almost touching, but not. Very close, but no touching. Then we'll grab our green, and we'll fill in that last little bit of the nose in green. Come around the nostril, and connect it to this green here. Then we'll grab our brown again. This is where the mouth is opening. So I'll put a smooth line right here that goes back all the way past the eye. And we'll stop right at that yellow line right there. So that's where the mouth opens, and if you want his mouth to be a little bit open, you can also put one more line right there. That'll be his mouth opening. If there's any gap, then you just get your green pen again and connect that right up to the mouth opening. Actually, the mouth is green in front too, so we can start adding a little green up front. But then there's more yellow stripes. So we'll go ahead and switch back to yellow. Put yellow all along the mouth and connect it right back up to the stripe again. There's a big yellow patch right here. And then, as you probably guessed, we're going to fill in the rest with green. And we'll just leave it like that for now. We're going to jump back up to this frill and add just a green triangle right in the corner here. After that green, we'll grab yellow and put a yellow stripe. And again, if I'm going too fast, just pause the video anywhere you need to pause until you catch up. It's just kind of a waste of film if I pause too often while I'm drawing. So you can control that with your video player. Then we'll take our green again. We'll fill this up. Even though it looks like I'm going back and forth, I'm actually going in loops. Very, very skinny loops. This will help it so that you won't get as many of these little dots here. Let me zoom in and show you. Right there. That darker dot, I don't really want that darker dot to be there. That's kind of the gunk that just gets on the end of your pen. So that's why we have to wipe them off every once in a while. So when I'm coloring, I'm trying to go more in a loop, but I'm making a very skinny loop so that it's continuous and never stops until I lift the pen up. So we'll go over and over and over and over, all the way up to the top here. As you can see from the picture, it's going to be a rounded frill. So we need to make that top round. Whoops, gotta get back on camera here. There we go. We're making that top part round. And if your other colors don't touch, that's okay. Just bring out your pens again and add a little more until they all go into one shape. We'll have another yellow stripe over here. See, I left a little bit of a gap there because I can see that this color goes a little bit more over there. Then we'll go ahead and grab our yellow, thicken up this stripe here. In the picture there isn't that much green, but I want to go ahead and add it anyway just because it'll match this side a little bit better. I'm going to fill in that last little bit with green. You can smooth out any exterior lines if you like. On this big frill. And I'll back up and show you what it looks like so far. Next, we're going to work on this very hairy chin. I mean, it's not actual hair because Chameleon's a reptile, but these little spikes that look like a beard. So we're going to color, actually we'll just color in the big patch first. It goes down and back. Go about there for now. And then there's all these little spines that come out, and they're kind of curved. So we can add those all along the edge. Actually, we might do this later when we're doing details, because they're all the way down. While we have our yellow, let's go ahead and add some more yellow in here. And actually we can just lightly color in the whole thing because the green is a darker color anyway, and we can go right over the yellow. So just on the bottom here, I'm going to add some thick yellow color. we'll grab our green pen and we'll start putting in some spots. There's different sizes, different shapes, kind of speckling the yellow part here, and then this part is mostly green. So we can fill in most of this with green, but there are a few yellow spots over here too. So we'll fill in those. And just place them randomly. You don't have to study the photograph too closely. So you can color in between those yellow spots. And then we can also add green spots on top of the yellow near the bottom. And we'll fill all of this in. Don't worry about covering up every little bit of white on the paper. I'm just trying to get it colored enough so that it looks green and not white. So we have the head of our chameleon started. We're going to go back to our yellow and add the neck. So above this stripe a little bit, this yellow stripe, we don't want to come right out of there because it'll look a little funny. We're going to go a little bit above and add a curve like this. And down here we'll continue a little bit more downward. So now we're going to do that really big kind of leaf shape that the chameleon has for a body. There's really great big shape here. So with my yellow, since there's yellow on the outside anyway, I'll go up, up, up. Not as tall as the frill in front, but then we'll start going back down. The more rounder and compact that you make this shape, the cuter that your chameleon will be. But the longer it is, it'll probably look a little more like an adult and less like a baby. So down here, the tummy's going to go down a little bit. And it's okay, you don't have to worry about legs because they're green and yellow anyway, and so we know the green goes right over the yellow. So we'll just sketch that out. And then we'll also sketch out the tail. Actually, no, let's wait on the tail just because if we have our legs in first, then it'll be easy to tell where the tail goes. But before we have the legs, it'll be a little bit harder. So we'll go back to the body. Try to brighten up my camera there for you. Okay. So for the body, we have 3 big yellow stripes, and I'm just going to lightly sketch those in. It gets a little wider toward the middle, and then it'll stop before it gets to the belly. There's actually this yellow stripe that goes this way too. Kind of cuts this in half this way. So I'll have one big stripe there. Another one over here. And then another little one that curves this way. So that's the light version. Now I have to go in there and actually make it yellow. So let's enjoy a little music while we fill this yellow in. grabbing onto. Let's scoop my paper up a little bit. So the branch comes right up to the tummy, so we can actually take our brown and just sketch in lines like that. There will be the branch later. And one foot is going to be grabbing onto this branch here. So I'll grab my green. And I'll start with just a curve one way and a curve that way. Because there's some yellow stripes on this foot, I'm going to use my yellow to color in how wide I want this foot to be. And then we can always come over with the green on top. But once I know how thick it's going to be, then I can continue my branch. I have to envision if it went under that foot, it would come out on the other side about here. If it went under that foot, it would come out there. And then we'll have the other foot, actually just little green toes, so we can use our green and do some little upside down raindrops. 1, 2, I believe it has 3. Yeah, it looks like 3. I've never seen a chameleon up close, so I could be wrong. I know one of our regular artists at the art studio actually lives with a chameleon, so she'll know how many toes to put. Put those in that like that. Take my brown pen again and come downward and continue this one downward. We'll fill in the tree branch a little later, and we'll go back to this chameleon's legs. So again, since there are yellow and green on these legs, we'll go ahead and just fill it in yellow first, and then we'll put the green on top. So this leg here is a little thick as it goes down into the foot, so maybe about that wide. The elbow is going to be right above, right in here, where these stripes meet. It'll be just a little bit thinner. And then it'll go and connect almost all the way to the head. The shoulder's going to be about right there where it connects into the body. So just lightly color that all in yellow. The other leg, we won't be able to see that much, but it is yellow, so we'll have a lot of yellow over here too. And a little bit of yellow over the toes. If you want to make this one a little bit darker since it's in the shade, you can take your brown and just make some marks that are lighter and have more space in between them. Let me zoom in to show you what I'm talking about here. So you can see that I'm not doing the continuous motion, I'm just flicking a couple times, trying to leave some of the yellow showing through the brown. You can even come back with your yellow if you want to and color back on top. Really get rid of all the white of the paper. Something like that. So for this other leg, let's zoom out just a little bit more. There we go. We've got green and yellow stripes. So I'm going to grab my green. Start down here at the foot, and first thing I'm going to do is separate out some of the toes here. Go around. So the ends of the toes are green on this foot. We can color that one in green, and we can color this one in green. There's a couple of green spots. So you can just randomly put a couple, just make sure they're different sizes and they're not uniform, because if we do spots too evenly, something like this, it'll look more like polka dots. So instead we want to try to have like one big one medium, one small, and we tend to cluster them, so maybe you'll put 2 together and then you'll put 3 over here, and this will look much more natural than if you were to do uniform dots. I'll zoom in a little more so you can see what I'm doing better. So I'm adding in these green spots. I'm going to leave some yellow and then add a stripe right above the foot here. I'll leave another stripe of yellow and add another stripe of green. Repeat that, add a stripe of yellow, another stripe of green. Looks like the elbow is yellow, but right underneath the elbow is green, and actually right above the elbow is green, so there's just one little elbow spot of yellow. And we'll have another yellow stripe, so I skip, start coloring above. A couple of these yellow stripes have green spots in them, so every once in a while you can add a few spots in there. And then we'll fill that in green until it gets up to the face. Oops, I did all of that off camera. That's the only problem with being on a camera and not in the studio. I don't have anybody to yell at me and say, Betsy, we can't see what you're doing. So here's what I did with the leg. I'm going to come back and strengthen some of my colors. This yellow part here is in the shade, so I'm going to take my brown again and do the same kind of darkening texture that I did on that leg there, just doing some very light strokes far apart. But it's enough to just change this yellow from looking like the other yellow and just looking a little bit darker. Coming back with my yellow over the top. A little bit like that. Then we've got green mostly down here, just a yellow rim on the bottom, so I'm going to leave that yellow rim. I'm going to try to make this edge a little more jagged and not quite so smooth. There we go. And we'll just fill this in green. Like that. Then in this section above, we've got a brown stripe. So from the head here, we'll start filling in brown. At first you can just make it an even stripe all the way to the back of this yellow one. Or the front of this yellow one, right here where they meet. Then I'll take a look at my photo and see that, oh, this stripe gets a little wider up near the head, so I'll add some there, I'll add some here. There's quite a big bump. on this side. And there's another bump on this side. There's like a little curl that comes up over here. It's very zigzaggedy, so I'm trying to keep my shapes nice and bumpy. Also comes down the edge of this stripe a little bit. And actually, if you wanted to, you could just go down the whole length of the stripe, since it's a nice divider between the yellow and the green. So this stripe is going to act like it continues right under the yellow, comes out the other side. And at first I'll just put a uniform stripe that goes all the way across until it meets that other yellow. Then I take a look at the stripe in the photograph and I see that there's a point on the top here. And a little dot on top of that, like a little volcano erupting. Then on the bottom is also rounded. Not so pointy, but just rounded. And a little bit of the brown goes down along the stripe here. And it gets kind of broken up. Do the same thing on top if you want. You can go up this way, add a couple of brown dots. And then for the next section, if it went underneath the yellow and came out the other side, it would be somewhere here. I'll start my first stripe, just even all the way across. And then I take a look and see that it's kind of wide where it meets the yellow. Also gets a little wider in the middle. And then spreads along the stripe a little bit. And this one I can see gets a little wider as it goes down here. Actually on this one too, there's some brown. So you don't have to look at every little bit of brown, but I try to work from the big shapes first and then add the smaller shapes later. It's like a little mini stripe right above there going underneath this one. And then over here too, gets a little wider as it goes up, a little skinnier as it goes down. Kind of like that. So now that we've got our brown in, we can add our green. So I'll come back in with my green pen and start filling in any whites left over. If you don't want it to be all green and you want a little bit of interest, you can grab your darker green and you can start filling in some of your darker green too, especially along the top of the body here. Is my lighter green again. I'm going to color my lighter green right over the darker green so that it'll fill in any white spots of the paper that I missed with the dark green. I blend those colors in a little bit more. I can do the same thing on the bottom here. If I want to add a little shading or just make it a little bit of a different color, I can start adding in some of the dark green at the edges. And in the middle here, I'll just go ahead and use my green again, my light green. Fill that all in. I feel like my brown stripe should be a little bit bigger, and I can color right over the green since brown is a darker color. Put that in there. And if you want to add a few more brown stripes here and there, you can go for it. That'll help give a little more definition. Just going back over with my light green, filling in a little bit more. I'll move over to the middle section, getting my dark green on top. Leaving more white space in between my strokes as I go down. Then I can come back with my light green and go right over the top. Do the same here. If you want to add a little bit of the darker green, just a little bit on the bottom, a little bit like grass growing, you can put that in there. And then the rest will be green, but again, I think my brown stripe is a little skinny. I'm going to add a little more brown in here. Go ahead and fill in green. And on the tummy too, we can have the dark green near the yellow stripe. We can go pretty much up to the end of this stripe here, but then we have to leave some room for the back leg. I'll go about that far. Use lighter strokes, more white in between as you go up. You can also go up and down this way if you want. Do some cross hatching. Change your direction of strokes. What we're really after though is so that there's a difference in the lightness or darkness of the color. So for instance, right here is really abrupt. We'll zoom in again. I'll try to remember to zoom back out. So over here, for instance, we have really dark green, like where it's all close together, and then we have all of a sudden it's very spaced out. So I have to try to smooth that out by adding more strokes until it's more difficult to see where one color ends and another begins. And it's just a matter of adding more pen strokes, but lightly, super lightly, because they'll slowly build up. So now it's a little bit smoother from that dark color all the way to that light color. There's no real abrupt change. So we've got that dark color there. If you want to strengthen up your yellow a little bit, maybe add some of the stripes going downward. You have to do that before you put on your green so that you don't go right over them. And we can come back in with our green and go right in between and right over the dark green. And you'll be able to see a difference between the spots that have the green on top of the dark green, and over here I'll just stop my light green before I go over it. And you can see the difference between how this part is getting warmer in color, more like the light green, and if I don't put it on top, then it stays kind of cold and you can still see the white of the paper. So that's why I come back over with my green. Go all the way up to that yellow stripe. And remember, this green color can go over the yellow a little bit, so if you want to add a few bumps into your stripes and make them look more natural, more organic, you can just wiggle your pen up in there and get that edge to be a little bumpier. Just a little bit more to go. Let's go ahead and put in the back legs. So the back legs are going to attach almost at the very end over here, and they'll have yellow stripes again, so we'll go ahead and start with yellow. The knee will be quite close to this stripe here, so we can imagine that the leg is coming out. There's the knee, going backwards. And we have to envision that our branch is continuing so that the foot will be somewhere right there. It'll be thicker as it goes down. If it's easy for you, you can just color this in until you get the shape that looks a little bit like mine. If it's easier for you to outline, like I'm doing right now, then go ahead and do that. Just use whatever works for you. Maybe another toe sticking out there. So that's kind of the shape we're going for the back leg. I'm going to lightly color it all in, and then I'll come back and just darken in my yellow stripes after I've put in my green. This way I can save myself some yellow ink. There's also going to be another foot coming around and grabbing the branch. We can take our brown and from this leg try to connect it up to this line here, and we're going to leave a little spot open. Whoops, as soon as my brown starts working. There we go. We'll leave one little spot open, and make sure there's a spot open on the underside too. So there's going to be one little chameleon toe on top here, and then 3 more on the bottom. Just think of those raindrop shapes. Pointy on one side, rounded on the other. And then we can take our brown and have the branch go right up next to the toes there. So that's where we are so far, and let's go ahead and put in the tail. Again, you can plot it out with yellow since that's the lightest color, or you can just go with your green, but I'm going to go ahead and use my yellow to plot it out. So from beneath this leg here, we're going to come down. If you go over your branch, that's okay. And we'll come around. And go all the way into a little spiral there. And on the outside, we're going to keep it thick. Keep it thick coming around. And then we'll start to get a little bit narrower as it goes into the coil. And keep going around all the way until we meet the tip again. Like that. Then the branch can continue on the other side of the tail and right off the paper if you want to. Now let's go ahead and go back to the legs that we were working on. This back leg, we're not going to see a whole lot of it. It'll just connect right back up to the body. We can put in our yellow. And it'll probably be dark like the other leg that was in the back. So we can take our brown, lightly put some strokes on top. And come back with the yellow. Color in those toes yellow. And we'll get our light green and just add a light green stripe on the bottom of each toe here, just curving around. You can do it on this claw here too, curve it around. Then for this one, we're going to have a whole bunch of stripes again. So on the foot part here, we'll put a green stripe going across. Don't forget you can add little spots here and there whenever you feel like it. Kind of a broken stripe up in here. Little green splotch on the side. Leaving some room for yellow, and then a green right under the knee. Yellow knee, but there's a little bit of green that comes from the back here. And I'll color some green right around the leg. And just go back and fill in your colors a little more solidly. I'll have to come back with my yellow as well. If there are any shapes that look a little too straight edged and flat, try to give them a little more bumpiness or curve them around a little bit. Coming back with my yellow. And if you'd like to indicate the separation of the toes, you can grab your green, put a little bump in there. And we've got the leg colored in. Then we'll go back to this little section of the stomach. I can come back with my dark green now and go all the way up to the leg. Still trying to get that fading effect by going lighter, 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 lighter. Different direction. I press dark and then lighter, 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 lighter. And I'll come back in with my lighter green and go right over the top of it. Do the same thing in these remaining sections. We'll have our darker green. And remember, you can turn your paper to wherever it's most comfortable for you to draw. And put down ink. Starting with lots of lines close together. Space them out, lighter, 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 lighter. Smooth out the transition. Same thing over here. Dark and close together, then we get lighter, 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 lighter. And with this really light pressure, we can go back over some sections and make it a medium tone so it has a nice fading effect. You can go in different directions if you like. Once you have your dark color down, then you grab your green, your lighter green, come right back over the top. And some more green right in here. And then the tail. So the tail is like the legs in that it's striped, so if you want to color in the whole thing yellow first you can, but the yellow isn't as thick on the tail, so I think I'll just go ahead and indicate where I want some yellow. And then I'll come back in with my green. So when we're coloring on this tail, we want to try to give it a little bit of roundness instead of going straight across, just to help it look like it's 3D. I'm not going to try to match the photograph exactly, but I want to take a look and see if my design of stripes looks too uniform, like we were talking about before, like polka dots. You can do the same thing with stripes. They can start to look like stripes that were painted on rather than stripes that this chameleon was born with. So we want to try to vary it up, make some thin, some thick. Some are only partially formed. On the tail I'm noticing a lot where there's a little bit of green, like in the middle of a stripe, so it has this sort of shape, or just this sort of U. It's yellow and then that spot's green. That's kind of neat. I might just keep doing that. And go all the way around this tail, all the way to the tip. And I'll grab my dark green, and this dark green color is going to be all along the top of the tail. We want to make sure that this color is about the same size all the way through the tail, so it's not just a tiny little short section on one part of the tail and then a great big section on another part of the tail. And we try our best to keep it all uniform, all about the same throughout. So it looks like it's continuing right under these yellow stripes. Of course, as you get to the smaller sections, it'll be a little harder, but something like that. Then I'm going to grab my green. Start coloring right over and into those white sections. If you have a little bit of the tree branch going into your tail, you just grab your brown and you start zigzagging it as if it were a brown stripe. And we'll just camouflage that. Now if you have one brown stripe on the tail just randomly, it looks like a mistake, but if you start placing them here and there, scattered around, then it starts looking more like a pattern and just part of this chameleon's design. You can sprinkle brown in here and there. Just remember, if you do it too uniformly, it'll look like a pattern that is man-made rather than found in nature. So we want things to look different. If this stripe is this big, I need to make the next one smaller or bigger, fatter or skinnier, lighter or darker. Something has to change. And green can color right over the brown, since the brown is a darker color. So we've got most of our Chameleon colored in. Just remember that it has those spikes, just like this bearded spikes, it has spikes across the top as well. So I'm going to take my yellow and just kind of randomly put, almost like dragon spikes, all the way up and around. There's some parts of the body that maybe you want to do it in the green instead. You can do that too. Every once in a while you can have a couple of green spikes where the body changes color here. And then once you get to a yellow spot, we'll go back to our yellow. And then I'll zoom in so you can see this a little better. So there's my yellow, but I hit a green spot, so I'll switch over to green. Back to yellow. And then maybe the yellow continues on a stripe on this part of the body for a while. I'll turn my paper so it's a little easier. Put a couple of tiny little marks on the tails here. Or while you have the same color pen, you can just go ahead and do those sections and then skip the yellow stripes and then come back with your yellow. So you don't have to switch pens quite as much. Some of my yellows weren't quite dark enough there, just filling those in as I go. And these spines are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until you can just do them with one little mark instead of making them triangles. I'm just taking my pen and going mark, 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 mark. A couple of spines out there. And once it goes into the coil of the tail, we won't be able to see them anyway. Like that. And then on the bottom as well, if you want to go along the entire body. Making that a little spikier. Oops, I just noticed this leg doesn't actually connect into the body there. We can fix that. Just get my brown again. Oh, my brown's not going. There it goes. Lightly fill it in with brown. Maybe even a little bit darker since it's even further back in the shade. And then I'll take my yellow right over the top. Like that. Then for your wooden branch, you can fill it in, whoops, with all brown if you want to, or you can just add a little bit of texture. Sometimes I purposefully leave the branch or leaves in the background white so that more time is spent looking at the colored section and not the non-colored section. Because when I have people look at my drawing of Chameleon, I don't want them to say, wow, what a great branch. I mean, they might say that a little bit later on, but I would hope that they would look at the Chameleon first, where I spent all of my time and work and energy. So I'm going to leave that one brightly colored and this one not as colored. So I just added some lines to kind of make like a wood grain. Nothing too special, you don't have to copy mine exactly. For those of you who are gluttons for punishment or just really like details, There is another texture that you can add right over the top. Let me zoom in and see if I can show you here. So you can see the texture of the scales being little round lighter dots, or over here maybe you can see a little better. Lots and lots and lots and lots of dots. So what we've done in the past for other lizards, I'm not going to do it on mine, but I'll show you how to do it. Try to ignore the grid there. Let's say we have a green section on our chameleon. You would take your brown and you would actually go in and just do little circles, little pebble-sized marks all the way around. Your hand will probably cramp up. You don't have to do this in the entire section. If you want to just fade it out again, you can just go boop, 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 boop. Whoops! Should have been more on camera there. But you can add this kind of scale texture if you really, really want to. I don't really want to, so I'm not. I will just enjoy my chameleon for what he is. Remember to sign your work. I like to grab a different color sometimes. Look at this pink. And this was the lesson for 3/18/20. So there's our chameleon. If you wanted to do the other chameleon that had the red, yellow, and green, I will have a link to this photograph, and that can be your practice by yourself. One little note that it is white on some of the underbelly and the leg there, so you have to keep in mind that that's going to be the white of the paper. So that one's your homework if you want to do your homework. Otherwise, I hope you had fun drawing this chameleon with me today, and I will see you next time.